Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, and welcome back, Woo Crew, to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I am here today with a dear friend and kindred soul, Sheena Wilson. Sheena is an adventurous seeker and a wise guide who has been practicing the art of slowing down and tending to herself for over a decade. Diagnosed with depression as a young teen, Sheena has grappled with what this means and has been relentless in following the internal whisper that says there's a better way. She's an advocate for mental health awareness and has started sharing more about her own experiences in the One Step Ahead series that she hosts on YouTube. And I've been honored to be a guest on that series a few times as well. I highly recommend you go check it out. She's an entrepreneur, and when she's not writing, she's supporting others to meet their goals and bring their projects to life. Welcome, Sheena. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, friend. I am so excited to be here, to be part of the Woo Curious podcast. I've mentioned to others, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but when I do, the Woo Curious has been a favorite, and I love to just tune into your conversations. You meet with such interesting people and you have such beautiful explorations of what all of this woo-ness is about, right? It's huge, this idea of the woo, but I love how much you're celebrating it. So thank you for inviting me.
Yay. Yeah, we were chatting before we hopped on about this has been a long time coming. And so it's so exciting to be connecting here. You and I always have such great conversations. So I expect this to be as fruitful as all of them. And to start us off, I'd love to ask, as I always do, your connection with the woo and spirituality and your spiritual journey through life, as much or as little as you care to share, and how it weaves into the work that you're offering the world these days.
I would say that I arrived on the planet knowing that I was woo. My mom tells stories of me being very, very intuitive when I was little and coming up with things that she just couldn't make any sense of. As I got, closer to being a teenager, I explored a little bit the darker side of woo just because I found it so fascinating, the idea of ghosts and spirits and where do these histories and these stories come from? And I just thought there's got to be a little bit something to that. But I remember that sparked some real concern with my teachers around grade 7. We don't talk about those things, right? Magic and all of it. And I thought, well, this is really like why? Like why? But I started to get this sense, okay, so on the one hand, the grown-ups say church over here is a good thing, and on the other hand, talking about ghosts or spirit is a bad thing. And so I kind of stopped sharing those parts of myself. And I think they retreated a little bit and made more space for me to really try and be all of those things that a good girl typically is.
Right.
And let me tell you, friend, I didn't feel like a good girl. Like I knew in my heart of hearts that I was a good girl, but there was a whole lot of messaging on the outside that contradicted that. And so I've made it a bit of my life's purpose in a way to find my way through all of that noise. And I would say in the last at least decade, probably even more, I have learned how to take comfort in the woo. Yeah, I had my first sort of spiritual awakening when I was 17, and I spent about 10 days in the hospital. Now, I was in the hospital being treated for depression, but what that really looked like was I was in the hospital taking a break from life. I just needed a break from the noise, from whatever pressures I was facing, from my home conditions, toxic relationships, all of that for the period of 10 days was turned off, and I received nothing but love. And on the other side of that, where I went in to the hospital really feeling like I don't want to be here anymore. I can't do this anymore. Life is too fucking hard. I came out the other side going, yeah, it is really fucking hard. And did you know that you are loved beyond measure simply for being here? You can't screw up so badly that you won't be loved. And it doesn't matter what you experience in this earthly realm. When I was really still and quiet, that knowing flooded me, and I can't unknow it.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I want to touch on a couple things. I know this isn't the end of the story, but the things that really pulled out for me in what you've shared so far, arriving woo on the planet. This is a common thread. I think we all arrive woo because the woo is not so woo. It's
No.
really about presence and the magic in every day and the connection to something more, the energies beyond the human realm. And that taps into that learning and relearning that so many of us discover when we're coming back into contact or into trust with the more magical or enchanted or woo aspects of life, is that learning how to take comfort in it. That really stuck out to me in what you shared, because it is maybe the most magical aspect of the practice, is finding comfort and stillness and trust. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. It also is interesting to me that you labeled the like darker side of the woo, ghosts and spirits and things, and it's so interesting. As humans, we like dichotomies, don't we? We have these like, it's light or it's dark, it's good or it's bad, and a lot of them are really false. It's human or it's not.
Mhm.
A lot of these are these false dichotomies, and so I don't view ghosts or spirits as dark. I think they're more shrouded in mystery. And
Mhm.
there's fear there for those who don't understand, which is like where the church comes in, especially if your teachers were Christian or of some organized faith. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I know you, and I know you to be a very spiritual and woo person. And this is an obvious connection to the One Step Ahead series that you've created. It's less obvious in instructional design and learning. And so I'm curious how these two sides of you play together.
Thank you for asking that. Personally, I have been working on reconciling those two different parts of myself. And I think that along with arriving on the planet, being very in touch with the woo, I also arrived on the planet with this keen ability to sense into where there is struggle and how we can actually create a little bit of ease around that. And I think that is what has served me best in my professional world. Is I still very much honor my intuition, and when I feel the need to speak up about something, I I have this sense of emboldened is the word that comes to mind, as long as I don't think about it too much. And so, as a little one, I was journaling this morning, and I remembered one of my report cards says, grade 1 report card, Sheena tends to be a little bit bossy with the other students. And it wasn't that I was always trying to have my way. It was that I would recognize that but there's a better way. Why wouldn't you try it this way? But of course, being able to communicate ideas like that requires a lot of skill and tact. Otherwise, one just looks like a bossy know-it-all is the label that comes to mind. And
Right.
again,
Oh.
we've got a very negative connotation wrapped up in all of that. And the younger you are, I think it's even more likely that people might label you as such simply by underestimating the wisdom that's already there. And we talk about arriving on the planet being woo. We arrive with that knowing, and then we kind of unlearn it over
Yeah.
a period of time. And some of us
Yeah.
start finding our way and prioritizing relearning it. But I think for a lot of people, it just kind of falls away. And then we get caught up in trying to live up to the expectations of the society that we're in, of our families, all of these other norms or mores or ways of being that are, well, they're deliberate structures as opposed to being natural ways of being. And so it can be really tough to reconcile those two things.
Yeah. I love the
Yeah.
way that you have identified that piece of you and the description of it, that bossy. We are definitely kindred. I also see things really clearly, and especially as a young person, but right up through until I was about 30. And I'm going to nerd out a little on human design here. This has something to do with my profile lines in human design. But until I was about 30, I just would tell people, like, if I saw something that could be done more efficiently, or if I understood what was happening in a conversation and the two people in the conversation clearly weren't understanding, I would just jump in and offer my knowing. And as a kid, I was called bossy often, and I got made fun of to no end by my ex-in-laws because I interrupted my brother-in-law at one point with, "You're wrong." And and so they teased me relentlessly for it. I deserved it. That I probably could have said, there's a more tactful way of approaching this, but I'm curious. I know there's something to do with like the connected or the filled in channel from heart to throat as part of that, like no filter speaking, right from being able to see. And the projector for me of that being able to see, but you're not a projector, are you? You're a
I'm a manifesting generator and 6'2". Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so it's the 6 line is part of
Yes.
it. That's me too. I'm a 6'3". So it's very interesting. And it makes sense that you're a manifesting generator because you're constantly churning out ideas.
I am so good with the ideas, and I thrive on building on ideas in collaboration with others.
Yes. Yay. I'm glad you brought us around to that topic.
I know I am living my life's purpose when there are opportunities to exchange ideas. I love my ideas. My ideas can often be very daydreamy, very big, not practical in the least, but they provide such a sweet starting place. And if we're going to be dreaming, who cares about being practical? Like, dream big and then sort out the details. And that's probably another reason why I've felt so aligned with project management is okay, the beginning of that, it's always so messy, and we get all of the ideas on the table and we build on ideas, and then we organize our ideas, and then we choose which ones we're working with, and we go from there. But I always would tell my clients, don't write off the big dreams, right? Like,
Yeah.
keep that vision there, but let's work with the manageable pieces to actually meet the
Yeah.
goals that we're trying to accomplish.
I got chills when you first said, why so often we discount our big dreams before we even have a chance to really truly
Absolutely.
dream them. And I
We
think
practically poop all over them.
yeah, we sure do. And I think that's part of what I'm just reflecting now. Part of what draws me in when we're in conversation, something that pulls me into your being and the way that you are in the world, is there is this sense of wonder about you. There's this sense of like lightness and sparkle and the joy and the wonder. It's very present, even though I know you also have this very pragmatic side. I don't know if
Yeah,
pragmatic's the right word, but there is that, like,
absolutely.
as you described it, like, okay, let's sort the ideas and take these tasks down to what can we actually do, but holding that vision and that wonder is something that I think you are exceptional at.
Thank you, friend. And I can only be exceptional in those spaces when I'm sharing them with other exceptional beings, because it is really hard to dream big and be practical and not feel lost and overwhelmed within all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think a lot of my mental health challenges have come from, because I really do feel that I am a light being, a light worker. I can see brightness where so many others are really just trying to sort through the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
But it's those moments of noticing the light and weaving that in to the darkness.
Yeah.
And I find it so interesting, friend. The more that I've been speaking about this recently, my throat starts to rattle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big part of that, loving the woo and celebrating knowledge of our chakra systems, for a long, long time, I have kept quite quiet because I
Mm-hmm.
have been living internally feeling so overwhelmed and really quite hopeless a lot of the time, because I sense that there's a better way. I can dream of a better way, but then the day to day life can feel
Mm-hmm.
really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so the importance of having practices, and have so much gratitude for learning how to both understand and practice with somatic, keep the overwhelm, well, it's not overwhelming anymore. It keeps things feeling more manageable, because I can cultivate within myself time to step into feeling that lightness, and then be strategic in weaving that into the day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suspect too that pieces of that overwhelm and that feeling of, not wanting to or being able to manage all of the stresses that life sets us is that, as you said, you are like a collaborator extraordinaire. And that's speaking to a human need that
Yeah.
many of us have kind of dissociated from or forgotten, is this need for connection. We are communal animals, and we live in a culture that really prizes independence and hyper independence, even. And so many of us, when we're struggling, rather than reaching out, we turtle. I've had a
Yeah.
conversation like this before on this podcast and have done with other friends. I recognize it in myself as well. And the knowledge that you have, or the wisdom you have of knowing that it's in connection that you create the most magic, that your gifts really come to light. I think that's a huge piece of wisdom for you, but also for listeners to take as well. If you're feeling that overwhelm, that struggle, that maybe just being unsure of what the next move is, we all need to practice reaching out. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not even for support. Sometimes it's just like, hey, I have this cool idea and I need to share it with somebody so that their excitement can bubble up your excitement. Or maybe they are the one who are like, ooh, that's such a great idea. I know somebody who can help you with that, right?
I'm really creating spaces to to celebrate that sense of wonder and curiosity, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder and curiosity almost feel like they are for children. And we grow out of these things. We are reconditioned to really try, and I use the word try deliberately. We try really hard to be strong, independent humans, because you're
Mm-hmm.
right. That's what's prized for us. And the truth of it is that that is just so isolating and so counterintuitive to what I think many of us yearn for, even if we can't identify that that's what's missing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. I very much agree. I think there's even, I'm sure there are some introverts listening. And, there are those of us who require less numbers of people in connection, but none of us can live entirely isolated and alone. We literally die from loneliness as humans. We literally suffer from physical ailments due to touch deprivation. Like, we are meant to be in community. And we know that COVID really exacerbated loneliness in our communities. And I think it also created this interesting space where we got really used to being alone more often, many of us. And in some cases, that's good. It gave us space and time to slow down and to reevaluate and do some of that internal work. And on the other side of it being, really, it's still around, but it's not as present in our day to day anymore. We're still struggling with the kind of shockwaves of those first 2 years, especially. And I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just simply an observation or a thought.
It's interesting, friend, that you bring that up, because I've noticed, like TV programs and stuff, we've reached the point now where COVID is turning into memes and jokes, right? You remember the good old days, or you remember, and in some ways it feels like so long ago. And in other ways, it's so very, very present, because I have a dear friend who stopped going to the grocery store, stopped going shopping really at all during COVID, and still hasn't gone back. And there's actually quite a bit of anxiety and feeling unsettled around all of that. And I identify, I think, probably as an extroverted introvert, in that I know I need those quiet times and spaces to myself, but then I want to come out of them and share all about what was going on while I was there, But I think why I identified as an introvert for so long wasn't because I was actually in needing that space on my own simply to process. I needed that time on my own to de-people.
Yeah.
And so there was an aversion for a long time. I remember saying, I don't like people. I don't like people. But I've come to understand, I don't like the way that I've been in relationship with a lot of people. But when I'm thoughtful and mindful and make conscious choices, well, then on the other side of that, there's collaboration and sharing and curiosity and celebration. And so that's why now it's, yeah, I still need that time on my own. Absolutely, I do. But it's not so that I can decompress from how I feel that the world is treating me.
Right. Oh, that's good. That the world is treating you.
Yeah.
That is such a key perspective shift, is to go from how the world is treating me to how I am moving in the world and
Exactly.
receiving what's there. I hate people, or people are awful. I hear that all the time, right? I used to say that people are horrible. And when we say it that way, we very much are dehumanizing people. Any one person in front of us, we wouldn't likely say that unless they were doing something really quite awful in the moment. But even then, one of the biggest shifts for me, and it's like such a simple piece of the work I do, has been this shift into compassion and
Mm,
harmlessness, and just embracing that for myself and for everyone else. And I don't do it perfectly, but the ability to, even seeing something pretty awful happening, and have a sense of empathy for the person doing that
mhm,
thing that might not be so good. I don't have to like them, and I do not have to agree with what they're doing, but to be able to say, "Ooh, like, you must be hurting to be
mhm,
acting that way."
mhm.
How does your internal landscape feel? Because it can't feel very good when we're harming others. And that shift allows me to take things so much less personally, too. Again, the
Mm,
world isn't happening to me anymore. I am moving in it and with it, and I get to decide how I'm responding to it.
there's so much more ease and grace and spaciousness having and in cultivating that lens. One of the biggest light bulb moments for me was learning that just because I see something, it's not my place to try and fix it. That is not where my energy is meant to be going. And in fact, the more that I can stay out of it and offer compassion and empathy towards the situation, along with a deep respect that they are on their journey and I am on my journey. So our hearts can ache for circumstances and for other beings, and we can choose to ground ourselves and to find our way back to ourselves and to continue on our own journey. Not to say that we turn a blind eye to everything, but it can become overwhelming very, very quickly. The best example I have is I used to ride the bus to work, and along the highway it was fine, but the closer we got to the core of downtown, the more I would see people in circumstances that really caused my heart to hurt. And I would get lost in the wishing to be able to make it different. It's not my job to wish for anything to be different, but rather if I can see it and wish for them to know love and consciously cultivate that loving sense and energy within myself and put that energy out into the world, that can do so much more good. Even if it only helps provide some peace in here so that I can keep doing what I'm meant to be doing and not get lost in the misery of others.
Yeah, yes, that is the piece, right? If we can't tend to our own internal landscapes, we won't have the energy, at least not for very long, to do what actions might actually be available to us. I think that, again, the simplest work, cultivating that love and then being able to, if somebody around you that you're in some conversation with says something derogatory perhaps about those people and those circumstances, being able to come in with a little like tidbit of compassion and just planting those compassion seeds. I obviously I don't have all the historical context. Somebody could be like, this is not true, Eileen, but I have this sense that the smaller the community, the fewer people who end up neglected on the street, for instance, there will
Mm.
be. Because when it's Uncle Bob and everybody knows Uncle Bob and yep, he's got some issues, but we're not going to like let him be outside and freeze to death on that first cold
Right.
night of winter. We're not going to let him go hungry. He may float from place to place, but there's this sense of like when we know a human being, the care exists. I truly believe that very few of us can turn a blind eye to human suffering if we don't dehumanize them.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And on the flip side of that, I see, and this is just because I come from a small town, the folks who aren't tended to tend to choose to leave, or unfortunately, in some cases, are driven away because the small town, the people who live there, thinking of it, as a collective influence, they don't want to deal with them. They don't.
Right.
They don't want to see them, and so there can be a strong culture of making things uncomfortable enough that people just have to leave. Just take yourself
Right.
away.
Right. And
And I
again,
think
that's
it's
comfort with discomfort, I think is what that's
yeah,
speaking. Like so many of us have no capacity for discomfort.
totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the things that do make us uncomfortable, we're going to judge them and label them, and we're going to perpetuate those labels and judgments, right? The ripples of those, celebrating anyone who's courageous enough to speak their convictions. Well, it comes back to your comment about harmlessness. Speaking those judgments can cause harm, whereas sometimes you think those things, but you don't need to say them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you can, if you're mindful enough, you can kind of explore, where did that come from? Why do I feel this kind of judgment? Or why am I labeling this person or these circumstances in such a way? What is that telling me about myself?
Yeah. That's where that curiosity comes back in. I'm going to bring us back around there as we're in our meandering conversation, that sense of curiosity about other humans, but also about ourselves and about the world around us is one of the most potent tools to lead a more easeful and meaning filled life, I believe. How do you feel like you reclaimed that sense of curiosity? Because I suspect there was a period where you lost it.
You know, I have always, always, always been very curious. I've not always indulged that side of myself.
Mm.
I'm smiling as I think about it. My sister would often have, she would slap my hand because we were walking around, and this is like grown up us. But I would find something interesting on the ground. I would squat, I would have a look at it, and sometimes, and all of the fellow witches out there will get this, sometimes it called to be picked up and to come home with me. And
Mm-hmm.
I would get this little slap. Sheena, it's dirty. Like, you don't pick stuff up off the ground. And how often have we been taught that, or see, parents teaching their little ones, you don't pick stuff up off the ground. And there was always just this big part of me that says, but why not?
But why
I can wash
not?
my hands when I get home. Like, why not? So I look around and I've got a collection of, feathers and different bits and pieces that I know when they come home with me, they need to be tended to in special ways so that everybody is safe. But I also know that I don't pick up every interesting leaf or piece of driftwood or stone or feather. I do, however, pick up the ones that call to me. And the only reason I'm available to hear that call is because I always just carry myself through the world with curiosity. And I am so grateful that it comes to me so naturally, because it feels like a gift of internal medicine. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I'm curious, I can't at the same time be anxious or scared.
Ooh.
And
Curiosity is an antidote to anxiety.
it really, really is. And the first time that I took the 8-week mindfulness based stress reduction program was actually just about 10 years ago. It was 2014. And it was at that time that I really learned how to be still and observe my thoughts, and be still and pay attention to how I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and meditation isn't always ideal. I will say that, but when I am feeling mentally strong, meditation is such a sweet, sweet space to be. And it is there that I get to just go into the space and be curious, curious to see what arises. And I noticed that when curiosity is present, everything else kind of just falls away. It doesn't take long before the thinking brain kicks in, but the felt sense of curiosity can be more mighty even than the concerning thoughts in my brain. And noticing those concerning thoughts and offering myself the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm worrying up here, and in here I'm feeling all like constricted and uncomfortable. But if I breathe and I think, well, what are you, why does this make you worry? Or how does this worry show up in your body? Then I remember also, well, what would you like instead? And knowing that I have the power to correct that. And curiosity is the easiest one. And that's part of the reason why nature is so magical. You and I have had conversations about noticing.
Yeah.
Noticing is the fuel for our curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Notice, wonder, just be there in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And you've mentioned a few of the tools or things that you use to support yourself in staying present to curiosity and wonder and in coming back to your emotions, meditation, this mindfulness. You briefly mentioned somatic practices. What other tools are supportive for you in staying, in that space of curiosity instead of anxiety, of wonder, of recognizing when you need to reach out instead of reach in? Anything that you can share wisdom with the listeners?
It's a big question. I'm kind of at a stage in my life where I'm really grateful because a lot of these practices have become, I want to say, autonomic responses. I don't think about them, I just know to do them. Confirming I'm still breathing is probably the first and foremost, right? Ask a friend,
Mm-hmm.
are you breathing? Of course I'm breathing. Yeah, but how do you know? Like, have you really stopped to check in with that? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Grounding myself so that I can actually be in the present moment. So the breath is one way, but even just pausing and feeling into where my body is, where my seat is on the chair, where my feet are right now, and really paying attention to how my body is feeling and how fast things are moving up here. And so noticing when busy brain creeps in, noticing when I feel that constriction, that tightness in my muscles, particularly around my neck and my shoulders. When I move it outside of myself, it gets to be, I don't know, it's still curious, but it's way more fun. Putting on a song that my body cannot resist bouncing to, regardless of how my heart and my head are feeling. I love that one because I'll hear my highest self suggest, you could put on a song, and then maybe the sad side says, I don't want to listen to that song right now. But
Mm-hmm.
if I just choose to say, okay, I get that, but let's just see what happens, there's that curiosity piece. I put the song on and my butt starts bouncing. And before I know it, I'm smiling. Like the rest of me has caught up to that energy. At the heart of all of it is coming back to my body.
Yeah.
It's getting out of my
Yeah.
head, coming back to my
I
body.
was going to say that that thread is there for all of it, and so
Absolutely.
many lovely, simple. It's so simple. It's so, so
Yeah.
simple. And it can be so hard. Oh, I saw your face. You have another idea.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about all of these things that are so very much body based, but the best space for me to be curious, and I love this because I've got all the colored pens and I've got beautiful journal books that I love. And I do so, again, I'm mindful of my body posture and all of these things, but at my writing table, and then just create the space for the words to flow through me, through my pen, onto the page to see what arrives. To me, it's so much fun because I never intend to create anything. And sometimes I find myself really entertaining, like, oh, that's so good. I had never thought of it that way. Or, oh, I didn't even know this was in there right now. It's a beautiful opportunity, again, to get out of my head and to rest into the woo and spirit a little bit, because I do so with this invitation. Okay, what do I need to see come through on that page? Please show
Yeah.
me, and I'll be the
Yeah.
channel to help that come through.
Yeah. Writing is so powerful. It's something that requires us to carve out time,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't happen instantaneously. It's something that I always weave into the Wheel of the Year ceremonies because I find it such a great tool to tap in and to allow ourselves to process, to listen to spirit, to listen to our subconscious, to be able to write without, trying to think of the best way to say it, just let it flow. Journaling is something I did all through my growing up years, and I pick it up and put it down these days, but it's always such a beautiful tool for processing and bringing out some of that clarity and truth, certainly. And I suspect that weaves itself in some ways into the work that you do and the things that you offer the world. I'm conscious of time. We could go for hours.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we could.
I would love two things. You are the first guest that I've had on who is a direct experiencer of some of my energy healing work. And I would be so delighted if, as we wrap, you would be able to share a little bit about your experience of what that space is like. And also, I want to know what you have to offer, what you're offering the world right now, what you're calling people into, how they can work with you and connect with you.
Awesome. Yes, thank you for asking. Um, Energy. It, The response that I'm getting to this question, it's just filling me up and lighting me up on the inside. Getting to know you, Eileen, and the work that you do has enabled me to, okay, I'm just going to say it, to say, fuck yes, I knew it. I knew it. I don't understand necessarily how all of the different energies in the world work and as they swirl around our galaxy and around our little beings and through the oceans and the tides and all of these things. But I do know that in working with you and acknowledging that energy, it's almost like the energy itself perks up at the acknowledgement and makes itself available to be tended to be nurtured, and honestly, in a lot of ways, just to be celebrated for being known. And I think it's interesting to me that when you ask that question, I feel this expansiveness that goes in, but also just this awareness. It's almost like my ancestors and guides have all come in to say it's because of Eileen that we now are all working together. They've always been there. My ability to see them, to recognize them, to cultivate, I'm now able to be, we're all just working together. And I think that's part of why there's a bit more buoyancy in my being now than there used to be, is because there is this full body, heart and soul knowing that while I might be the only one in this space wearing a meat suit trying to build a life, there is so much energetically and spiritually that is working alongside me, that is protecting me, that is uplifting me, inspiring me, celebrating me. And it's because of you that I now feel a much deeper knowing, like some of them now, they have faces.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Oh,
know
that
what I
makes my heart
mean?
sing. Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
did a really, really beautiful session. It was my soul council session. And the guides that I met around the fire that I found myself at through that visualization, I feel them with me. And I love that I have a sense of, as much as I can, of the physicality.
Mm-hmm. There's a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And so
lovely.
much acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is, we talk about our need for connection. A big part of our need for connection is acknowledgement that we're here,
Yeah.
and we're trying and we're doing our best, and we're still just these, funny little bits of star stuff with a spirit inside who is trying to make their way around this crazy game of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. That was beautiful. The way that you string words together never fails to, well, send me into a state of wonder. I love the intentionality and the magic that you weave through the way you describe your experiences.
Aw, thank you, friend. Thank you,
You're
friend.
welcome. So, how can people connect with you?
Well, right now it's a really interesting time for me because I made a very deliberate choice after spending quite some number of months on medical leave due to burnout and anxiety and depression, I left the good government job. I hung up the golden handcuffs, and I spent a number of months trying really hard to create this business for myself, focused on instructional design and instructional design for online learning. And over the last number of months, I've been shaking off this very firm identity. I am an instructional designer. I am a project manager. Everything else I do, every other part of me comes second to that. And I thought, no, that's not true. This isn't filling me up. I was trying to teach very formal ways of going about building online courses to a world of online course creators who are like, I've got an idea and I'm doing it my way. I want to see what your way is. Like, I find that way more interesting than me trying to tell you how it should be. Instead, once I realized that that's what I was doing, I just kind of shook my head and thought, those are the people that I dislike working with the absolute most. So why am I trying to be that? And so I've softened into what I am really good at is as we talked about in the beginning, I can look at a set of circumstances and I can easily discern, okay, I think these things are getting in the way. I think these might be some ways of moving past that. So I'm holding space now to support people who are working on all kinds of projects, and creating an online course might be one of those projects. But it could also be as simple as, I really would like to cultivate a writing practice. I would really like to find ways of connecting in community. Even if I don't know exactly what it is that I'm doing there, I want to be part of something that's outside of just me being me. And so I've actually got my new identity, a new brand is on the horizon. My company's strategic learning design is still there, and I'm more than happy to work with anyone who would like support with creating an online course.
Oh, and you're so good at it,
Oh,
having
well, thank you. I
been the
know this
recipient of your
stuff.
teachings. You do know it, and it made it so clear to me where my course could be stronger and could serve people more deeply. Like it was yeah, really, really wonderful knowledge. And I think you're right that people have to be in a place where they're ready to make it that extra level
Yeah,
of deep or of useful, or
yeah.
so many entrepreneurs are like, no, I have an idea, it's out tomorrow. No
And
time for this.
that was a fight that I fought for a really long time, and I realized though that was all coming from judgment on my part. So absolutely, I am here and I can help make whatever your offer is more valuable for your learners in how you approach the actual teaching of it, not just the telling. You can tell somebody how to do something, or you can teach them how to do something. And teaching involves multiple steps and a fair bit of support in order to really empower learners for success. So, my favorite thing is when somebody has a course that they've already put out into the world, they've tried it out, they're thinking, it could be even better, but I'm not sure where to start. I'm not sure how to prioritize. How do I even figure out what would make it better? I'm your gal. I'm your gal.
Yeah.
We'll have such good conversations, and I can guarantee that you will leave with a laundry list of ideas to start working with. Not all things you need to do, but ideas that will inspire. And I'm really excited. I know this episode is going to come out after the things I'm working on currently have happened, but I trust that I will be doing them again. And so I am actually creating an online space, the Aligned Learning Lab, and I describe it as a digital makerspace. So it's a community and a space to come and work within a supportive environment.
Vortex.
It's like an extended vortex.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing.
Absolutely. With lots of opportunity to come together and just show up. Ultimately, what I'm building is what I want to be working within.
Mm-hmm.
You are sitting in your office alone. I am sitting in my office alone. I don't know about you, but I feel the furthest from alone ever because we're connecting. We're
Yeah.
connecting,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
That
we're
power.
uplifting each other with what it is that we're creating and wanting to put out into the world. And we're having these really important conversations about how to find our way to not just feeling aligned with the life that we're living, but to really build confidence in that and trusting our intuition and following our hearts in a world that has tried to tell us that that's the least reliable thing you can follow. And we're
Mm-hmm.
saying, nuh-uh, I know that
Mm-mm.
that's not true. And as I've said, I hear that it's a relentless whisper. There's a better way. There's a better way. Keep seeking, keep
The
being
better way.
curious, keep trying, but don't try to the point that you're breaking your trier.
Yeah.
You need your trier to be in good shape. It needs
Oh my
rest.
goodness. That's gold, pure gold. It does need rest.
So that's what I'm doing right now. And in the fall, I will be facilitating, I hope, at least 2 or 3 different groups of folks who really want to tackle The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, who want to make that
Oh,
12-week
yay.
commitment and just know that a little bit of extra accountability, a little bit of extra personal investment, and community is going to enable success for a lot of people. And it has changed my life. It helped me go from being a writer who didn't write for 20 years to a writer who writes all the things and nothing all at the same time, all the time. And I love it because I'm just curious to see what it turns into. If anything, it doesn't have to turn into anything. I'm just loving being with it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Oh, those are both really beautiful offers, and definitely you can connect with Sheena in various places. I know you're active on LinkedIn. All these links, of course, will be in the show notes for you to connect with her. You can connect on Instagram as well at Sheena Lurie. And then you definitely need to go and subscribe to the One Step Ahead podcast series
Yes,
because
please.
there is so much wisdom there. Sheena, you co-host with your friend Sabrina, and the guests that you have on have just a wealth of knowledge and wisdom to share with tools and resources for living, really.
Yeah.
For living.
Yeah. Yeah. For living for yourself based on who you know yourself to be, and really stepping away from some of the programming, some of the expectations that I felt like I wasn't meeting expectations for a very long time. Well, I was trying to meet the wrong expectations. They weren't mine. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I really love about this series is really the opportunity to celebrate so many incredible, wise humans who are doing things just a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 Beautiful.
And I will give that extra little plug. Eileen hasn't just been a guest, she is actually our seasonal advisor. So, you, my friend, have been part of the project since before I even had guests booked to be on there. You were need Eileen. So, thank you so much for your contributions and for letting us talk about it a little bit here, too.
Yeah, it's been my absolute pleasure, as has today been. Thank you so much for being my guest. And for everybody listening, please go connect with Sheena on whatever platform suits you best. And of course, all of the links to reach out to work with her will be in the show notes below. Next week, I'll be back. I don't actually know if I'll be back with a guest next week. It's not at the front of my brain, but I'll be back. And as always, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and give it a rate, a review. It really, really helps this show get discovered by other listeners. And share. If you're sharing on Instagram, please tag me at I am Eileen March or at the.woocurious.podcast and Sheena at Sheena Lurie. And we will see you back here next week. Bye for now.